Welcome back to Project Dakar. I noticed I had an audio issue in the last video where I was explaining how I used my 3D printer to create a press tool for the rear main seal. I went ahead and fixed that audio and added it back to this video. You might also have noticed I rebranded the channel name. I'll get into all of that at the end of the video, but for now, I hope you enjoyed episode 8. Real quickly, I wanted to show why having a 3D printer on hand is super useful when working on cars. You're able to print all kinds of different jigs or tools that you might need. For instance, this is pretty much identical to the BMW tool that you can purchase that costs you around $70. There's also a fancier one that costs around $90, I believe. I was able to print this in just 2 hours for pretty much 30 cents, I'd say. I made it out of PETG, which is a bit stronger of a material. PLA is sort of the most common material you'll find, but all of them are pretty easy to print with. I went with a 40% infill on this. It's actually got quite a heft to it. If you wanted to do PLA, you'd probably need a little bit more infill because it's a little bit less strong of a material. But basically, you will take this tool, we'll put it with the rear main seal. It aligns with this little flat spot here that is also on the carrier, and you'll either press it or hammer it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick and get this rear main seal situated so we can go ahead and put it on the car. And there we are. Just like that, I was able to hammer it in, and this kept it perfectly flat, so the edge is perfectly flush with the carrier. So this thing's ready to go into the car. Super nice and super easy. Okay, got some fresh gloves on. This is one of those parts where you want to start being extra clean when you're dealing with any of the rotating assembly. Typically, you just don't want to have dirty hands and be touching everything. You don't want stuff to go through your bearings. So let's go ahead and dab on a little bit of this sealer and get her on there. Not gonna put a whole lot, just enough. I'm gonna put a little bit down here too. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil on the surface of the crank. Just to help ease it on. So normally there is a white plastic guide that'll help you guide this on. I don't have that. My kit actually unfortunately didn't come with it. I'm gonna try and make do with it. You just gotta make sure it doesn't fold up on itself as you push it on. It's a little finagling to deal with it, but you should be able to do it if you don't get the guide. I would recommend getting it though if this is your first time, but I should be good. Hopefully I don't have to redo this. There we go. It looks to be good. Yep, and the lip doesn't look to be bent or kinked anywhere, so we should be good. Obviously, if it starts leaking out nowhere. But that's probably the sketchiest part, I would say, is not having that guide. It helps keep the seal from folding in on itself as you push it on. It sort of creates a barrier to slip over the crankshaft as you're putting it on. But like I said, didn't have it, and I didn't want to wait to order one. I also didn't really want to pay money, and I also didn't feel like 3D printing it. So we're just gonna hope that that's all good. Okay, now we gotta go ahead and torque this before the sealant is dried, which honestly I'm probably pushing that boundary already. I've been kind of lollygagging, so let's get that on there. The two larger, or I know the 10 mil or 10 Newton meters torque spec. I gotta double check what the 13s are. But okay. Unfortunately, I cannot get the torque wrench in on this bottom 10 mil, but we can go ahead and torque it later. We'll just snug it up real good now. Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe this mating surface again with acetone.
Probably find our oil pan bolts where they are at. I do not currently know. They're in a bag somewhere. All right, let's go ahead and torque this oil pan. I'm gonna go from the inside out. And just like that, oil pan is back on. Got them all torqued down to spec, and we can rotate this thing back over. Now that we got the oil pan and the engine flipped back over, we're gonna go ahead and replace a few parts, including the crank position sensor. I believe this is the coolant temp sensor. There's also a coolant outlet right there that I ultrasonically cleaned, so we're gonna have to go and put that on, as well as this coolant output here. And that should be, for the most part, the rest of this side complete. In terms of sensors, I don't think we're gonna replace any of these, so let's get on it. Crank position sensor, the reason I am replacing it is actually cracked. The sensor itself has a bit of a crack on it, so don't want to have to deal with any codes or anything like that. So you can see that's had a bit of a crack. No biggie. We'll just clean this up real quick and put the new one in. Just gonna put a little bit of oil around the O-ring to help make it seal. Okay. Couldn't find a torque spec for this. I actually really couldn't find a whole lot of information on it. Allegedly, there's something about being able to fit a piece of paper under it. I'm not too sure. I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten it down to be nice and snug and call it a day. Two 10mm bolts will hold it in place. Torquing to 10 Newton meters. Perfect. Let's put this sensor back in. Here's the new one. I believe it. Yeah, this one's actually an OEM BMW one. There weren't any OE ones that I could find in a reasonable time frame. Okay, let's see. Got a hilarious adaptation of 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Torque spec was hard to find anything in particular. This is one of those ones that's kind of weird. I saw 13 foot-pounds, which is equivalent to 17 Newton meters, so we're gonna just run with that. There we go. Okay, next we're gonna go ahead and take care of the infamous oil filter housing. This might be a little bit out of order, but I just cleaned up the filter housing and just want to get it on because I flushed it with a little bit of oil after the ultrasonic cleaner, and now it's oozing all over the place and ruining my beautiful work. So we're gonna go ahead and get that on. It's just a couple of 13mm bolts to hold it in place, and they are all torqued, I think, to 22 Newton meters. So here's our housing. Looks quite a bit better, but could have been better. But what can you do? Unfortunately, the ultrasonic cleaner can only do so much, and my blood, sweat, and tears can only do so much as well. So let's go ahead and get this on. Don't mind me continuously working on trying to make it clean and pretty. All right, let's just send her. All right, got the oil filter housing on. Now that can't leak, hopefully. And hopefully that seal works out for us and doesn't give us any problems. They're super notorious for leaking on pretty much all BMWs, especially these motors. But I think next order of action is get the coolant outlet there on, as well as the coolant pipe that sits through here. And we'll really start just buttoning up this side and with all the intake manifold stuff, as well as the dipstick area. So let's keep on moving. Honestly, if I really had the time, I would have loved to have polished this up and make it real nice, but this might not be staying on the car. It might not, or it may, I'm not too sure. Could go S54 housing so we could have the external oil cooler, but again, I don't know how much money I want to really put into this motor, being that it might not stay in the car forever. But I can't lie, I'm actually kind of falling in love with this engine. I like S54s more, but, oh, excuse me. I really like S54s, but this one's unique in its own way. Obviously, it's not the S50 that Europe got, but I'm putting a lot of work into this, so there's some things I enjoy about it. Let's go ahead and get this bracket back on real quick. Get those bolts in there, the two 13mm bolts. Let's go ahead and torque these bolts now. The torque spec is around 24 Newton meters for M8 bolts on S52s. You don't really have to torque these, I just like to. I'm gonna go ahead and get this coolant outlet on now. Brand new crush washer. Thread that in. Actually couldn't find a torque spec, so we're just gonna go ahead and give it a nice twist. Perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and prepare this hard coolant pipe. I'm gonna take off the old coolant hoses and replace them, as well as the O-rings that go on the outlet. Just gonna use a little bit of Scotch-Brite and acetone to clean this up. So personally, I like to reuse the BMW hose clamps. I don't like to use the ones that are provided. Usually they're in perfectly fine working condition, and they tend to just fare a bit better than what is given. So it's just a personal preference. You can do whatever you want. Some people like the newer ones. It's up to you. Make sure that seats up all the way. And let's go ahead and tighten that. There we go. I can't remember if there's a particular orientation you want the clamp to be in for accessibility, but we can figure that out as we put this actually back on the car. Now we should have two O-rings we got to put on this end. There's one. There's two. Just gonna make sure they're not bound up or anything. Okay, let's go ahead and install this coolant pipe now. Gotta work it in, especially with those new seals in there. There we go. Gonna go ahead and put on the Vanos oil line now. We have a brand new hose, as well as banjo fittings and crush washers. The orientation of this is a little confusing. It took me a second actually to figure it out, but this should be the correct way. It just bends in a strange manner and doesn't look like it gives the right amount of slack, but the more kinked end should be on the oil filter housing. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and torque it. The torque spec should be around 24 Newton meters. My wrench does about 23, but that should be good enough. I'll go a little more. Just make sure the line is in a good spot. Well, let's go ahead and do the Vano side. That one was much easier. So we're gonna go ahead and do the valve cover now. I cleaned up the surface of it with some acetone. We have a few of these studs to replace, 3 of them to be exact. I went ahead and oiled up the cams as well, just to give them a little more lubrication since they've been sitting for a little bit without the engine being on. So just to help with the first start. You don't have to torque these studs, but I'm going to pretty much just going to torque them to the same spec that the nut that goes on top of it will be at, which should be 10 Newton meters. Another thing you want to start to do when you're working on the engine is just clean up your sockets, especially after working on such a grimy engine. My sockets tend to get quite nasty inside, and you don't want to track that stuff into your engine when you go and tighten things. So let's go ahead and get this valve cover on. Now we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of silicone to the head in the place where the Vanos meets the head, as well as where the cam cutouts are, just to help with the hard cuts there. All right, and with that, we have the valve cover on. Let's go ahead and transfer over the oil cap now, as well as the ignition coil wiring harness. I'll admit I didn't clean this super thoroughly, but it'll be covered up, so I'm not too worried. There we go. Got it all clipped in. Okay, let's go ahead and get this coolant hose on to the head. This goes from the head to the throttle body. It's a little hard to figure out the orientation of this one too. It's one of those things you should take a picture of before you take it off, but I had something that worked good enough. Perfect. Let's go ahead and get the knock sensors back on. Made sure to note what the orientation was when I took them off, and we're going to install them the same exact way. So the long lead in the front of the engine and the short lead in the rear. These M8 by 30 bolts will get torqued to 15 foot-pounds. Right away, I'm going to be brutally honest. I did not try very hard on this. It is just not worth the effort, to be honest. It's going to get nasty and dirty anyways. So excuse its ugly nature still. Let's go ahead and get this on though. Go ahead and get the nut on over here. And this 10mm bolt down here. Am I missing something? No. Perfect. Then it really just becomes plugging away, if I'm being honest. Let's see here. What do we want to do first? Let's go ahead and tighten that 10mm nut and this bolt. We can go ahead and start with the knock sensors here. The nice thing is pretty much none of the sensors can just plug into the wrong spot, so you're not going to mess it up, truthfully. Oop, we missed. Ah, did we mess up? Missed the connection point down here. Go ahead and loosen those bolts real quick. There we are. It's one of those things you got to do it all at the same time or else it doesn't like it. But now we should be good. Okay, we got the cam positioning sensor right here to plug in. Actually, I'm gonna put that below there. There we go. Got the head coolant temperature sensor right here. Just gotta clear the Vanos line a little bit. Okay, this one right here is gonna go to the oil filter housing. Let's see. Perfect. Should redo that sheathing, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I'll come back to it. So this wire here is gonna be for the alternator. Then we have a few of these plugs that go up to the intake manifold. So we'll need those once that's on, of course. I believe we're nearly time to do the intake manifold. So let's go ahead and get that prepared. We're gonna replace the crankcase ventilation system on it. And then we'll go ahead and put it on the engine and hook up the rest of the sensors.
Drive to Revive. Yep, you heard that right. I've decided to rebrand the channel. After the recent closure of my local racetrack, I realized my initial plan to do both restoration and racing content on this channel just got a lot harder. I still do plan to make some track day content, but it definitely won't be as often or a main focus. I figured now is better than ever to rebrand, and let me know in the comments below if you like the new name. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.